You ever had someone try to ruin your life over the tiniest things? A garbage bin out of place. A porch light left on. That's how it started. But it ended with a public takedown no one saw coming. She thought she could bully me into silence. What she didn't know was that I never fight loud. I fight smart. You don't notice the small things until someone teaches you to look for them. The uneven crack in the sidewalk. A lawn just an inch too tall. The faint trace of mildew near the gutter drain. Ben Morgan never cared about any of that. At 37, he considered himself a quiet type. Not shy, just reserved. Analytical. The kind of man who spent more time listening than speaking. He and his wife, Claire, had moved into Sycamore Oaks 6 weeks ago. The neighborhood was one of those master-planned, manicured enclaves in Northern California. The kind where the trees were evenly spaced, the mailboxes uniform, and the silence curated. It wasn't their first choice, but it was affordable, safe, and close enough to Claire's new teaching job. Ben, a software engineer who worked remotely, welcomed the idea of living somewhere calm, somewhere predictable. But Sycamore Oaks had a heartbeat of its own, and Ben was just beginning to hear it. It started innocently. A note on their doorstep. Folded paper. Neat cursive in blue ink. Welcome to the neighborhood. A quick reminder that trash bins must be stored out of view by 8 a.m. the day after collection. We all work hard to maintain a certain standard here. Smiling face with smiling eyes. Judith Holcomb, HOA president. The smiley face somehow made it worse. Claire chuckled when he showed her. She probably gives her grandkids passive-aggressive Christmas cards, she said, tossing it on the counter. Ben didn't think much of it. He moved the bin, set a calendar reminder. That should have been it. But it wasn't. The next week, the same envelope appeared. Hi again. Just noticed your front porch light was on all night. We have a neighborhood energy conservation initiative. Please help us keep our carbon footprint low. Claire raised an eyebrow. Does she walk around here at night taking notes? Ben shrugged. Maybe she's just thorough. Then came the email. Subject: Lawn care reminder. First notice. Sent at 6:04 a.m. Good morning, Benjamin. Our landscaping standards require lawns be trimmed weekly, not bi-weekly. I noticed some patchy overgrowth near the walkway yesterday. A quick touch-up would keep things looking lovely. Ben stared at the screen, his coffee cooling in his hand. His lawn was trimmed. Not golf course perfect, but clean, tidy. Better than most, actually. He opened his HOA welcome packet. A small booklet Claire had shoved into a kitchen drawer. Flipping through, he found the landscaping guidelines. Weekly maintenance was recommended, not required. The next morning, he mowed the lawn again anyway. Not because she was right, but because he didn't want the hassle. But Judith wasn't interested in peace. Not really. She came knocking 2 days later. Literally. It was 2:15 p.m. Ben had just ended a Zoom call when the doorbell rang. Judith Holcomb stood on the porch, dressed in crisp khakis and a sleeveless blouse, her blonde bob neatly lacquered. She wore a name tag, Sycamore Oaks HOA president, as if this were a campaign stop. Benjamin, she said brightly. Hope I'm not disturbing you. He forced a polite smile. Nope, not at all. She stepped forward without invitation. I just thought it'd be helpful if we had a quick chat. Sometimes email can feel so impersonal. Don't you think? Ben nodded cautiously. She scanned the porch, her gaze flicking to the potted succulents near the door. I wanted to mention that decorative items are limited to 3 per entryway. Those little guys are charming, but 4 is technically out of compliance. They're plants, Ben said. Judith chuckled. Everything's decorative if you leave it there long enough. She handed him a printed copy of the HOA rules, this one annotated with highlighter marks and sticky notes. Just trying to keep everyone on the same page, she said with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Claire was furious when she got home. She came to the house? She asked, pacing the kitchen. Who the hell does that? Ben leaned against the fridge. I think she likes the control. It's a power trip. Next she's going to tell us how to breathe. Ben didn't disagree, but he didn't react either. He watched, listened, took notes the way he always did. He understood how people worked. He understood obsession when he saw it. 2 days later, Judith filed a formal complaint. Ben's garbage bins had been out well past 9 a.m. on Tuesday, something he knew wasn't true. He'd pulled them in at 7:40, before his first call. He had the phone GPS logs to prove it, but that didn't stop her from escalating. Next came a complaint about his car, that it had been parked on the street overnight, which was a violation of street-facing vehicle policies. The HOA bylaws did mention extended parking, but his car had been there for 2 hours at most, while Claire moved her boxes in from the garage. Ben submitted a written rebuttal, attached timestamps, a screenshot of their security cam feed. Judith replied within minutes. "Thanks for clarifying. I'll mark it as resolved this time." Smiling face with smiling eyes. Claire wanted to scream. Ben just stared at the smiley face. "This woman's playing a game," he murmured. "And what game is that?" Claire asked. Ben's eyes stayed on the screen. "Whichever one she thinks she'll win." Over the next 3 weeks, the notes and emails kept coming, each one smaller, pettier, but more pointed. Grass clippings on the sidewalk. Porch furniture that wasn't weather-resistant. A flag Claire had hung. A simple pride flag, cited as non-compliant with neutral visual tones. When Ben pushed back, Judith doubled down. She forwarded one of his replies to the board. Claimed he'd been disrespectful. Recommended a $100 fine for uncooperative communication. Ben read the email twice. She'd edited his words, lifted the tone out of context. Claire wanted to go nuclear, but Ben, he did something else. He started a folder on his desktop, labeled it Judith_HOA. He began saving every email, every text, every photo of his lawn, timestamped, video clips from their ring cam, audio recordings from the porch. Not for revenge. Not yet, but for truth. For the pattern. Because this wasn't about landscaping or porch lights or carbon footprints. This was about power, control, and a woman who had spent too long thinking no one could stop her. But Ben had patience, a skill Judith Holcomb didn't understand. And when the time came, when she finally overplayed her hand, he'd be ready. Judith Holcomb was the kind of woman who could weaponize politeness. She never raised her voice, never used profanity, never said anything overtly cruel. But somehow, every email felt like a slap in the face, dressed in lavender fonts and sign-offs like, "Warmest regards." Ben had read every one of them, twice. By the time October rolled around, the welcome phase had morphed into outright harassment. All still wrapped in the illusion of civility. She started reporting their house. Not just complaints anymore. Reports. One came in for non-regulation window coverings. Another cited visible storage of gardening tools. A small rake left on the side yard after Ben had trimmed the hedges. Then there was the report for decorative holiday lighting displayed before the approved period. It was October 10th. Claire had hung one string of autumn leaf lights around the porch banister. Judith's note that time included an attachment. A screenshot of their house, taken from the sidewalk, possibly zoomed in with a phone camera. The implication was unmistakable. She was watching them. Ben didn't tell Claire about that one. Judith had allies. The HOA board had 5 members. Only 2 had ever responded to Ben's emails, and both did so with a vague deference that suggested they'd rather not get involved. Then there was Russell, vice president of the HOA, retired contractor. According to the neighborhood forum, he and Judith co-managed most enforcement. Ben noticed how Russell started driving by slower, how he'd idle in front of their house longer than necessary. Once, Ben walked out to collect a package and Russell sped up abruptly. Not fast enough to be obvious, just fast enough to feel intentional. "You're being paranoid," Claire said. Ben wasn't so sure. He'd been collecting everything. Photos, emails, HOA bylaws, meeting notes from the community site. He started cross-referencing complaints Judith had filed against other neighbors. 2 families had moved out in the past year. One, the Sotos, had quietly sold their house and left in the middle of the school year. Claire remembered hearing rumors that the HOA had made it difficult for them. Ben dug deeper. The Sodos violations had been oddly similar: lawn edging, exterior paint tones, holiday decorations. Claire found their contact info through the parent group at her school. Ben sent a polite message. A week later, he got a reply. "We tried to fight her. It just got worse. She got the board to fine us 3 times in 1 month. Every appeal was shut down. We couldn't afford to keep going. If you're dealing with her now, document everything. And be careful."
Rosa Soto.
Ben stared at the message for a long time. Then he added it to the folder. On October 24th, Judith crossed a line. Claire came home in tears. Her classroom door had been opened when she arrived that morning. Someone had gone through her desk. Nothing was stolen, but her drawers were left open, papers rifled through. She filed a report, but there were no cameras in that hallway. No proof. That afternoon, an envelope appeared in their mailbox. No stamp, no address. Inside was a printout, a screenshot of Claire's personal Instagram from 3 years ago, a photo of her with a friend, holding cocktails on a beach, scrawled in pen across the bottom. Seems a little unprofessional for a teacher, don't you think? Ben's blood went cold. This wasn't about lawns anymore. That night, Ben reviewed their camera footage. The front cam had glitched. The mailbox was just out of range from the side view. He sat in the dark office long after Claire went to bed, scrolling through old emails, looking for patterns. That's when he found it. Buried in the bylaws was a clause about anonymous complaints, that they weren't supposed to be accepted unless submitted through the official HOA web form, logged by time and IP address. Every one of Judith's recent complaints had come from her personal Gmail, not the HOA site. He highlighted the clause, took a screenshot, labeled it violation_01. Then he pulled the metadata from one of her emails. IP address. He found another. They matched. Ben wasn't a lawyer, but he was a systems guy, and the system was starting to show cracks. On October 31st, Halloween, the Morgans hosted a modest gathering. Just cider, snacks, and pumpkin carving in the front yard. 8 guests total. They wrapped up by 9 p.m. Nothing wild. The next morning, Judith struck again. This time, it wasn't a note. It was a letter, hand-delivered, from the HOA board, letterhead, seal, and all. "Dear Mr. and Mrs. Morgan, you are in violation of community noise and occupancy standards. Unauthorized events of more than 5 non-resident guests are considered disruptive under Article 7.4b. Further occurrences may result in fines or escalation. Regards, Sycamore Oaks HOA Board." Ben stared at the page. Then reread Article 7.4b. It referred to rental properties, specifically short-term rentals and parties advertised on public sites. They had hosted neighbors, families. No music, no ads, no rentals. This was fabricated. Deliberately, Claire wanted to fight it. Ben smiled. "I think we will," he said. But first, he opened his Judith folder. Renamed it Case File Holcomb. That night, he didn't sleep. He spent hours organizing files, building a timeline, annotating screenshots, and mapping each complaint to an HOA clause. Where Judith lied, he added tags. Where she violated process, he bookmarked. He even created a spreadsheet: violations versus policy citations, color-coded. When the file was done, it was over 170 pages long. A case, a weapon. But Ben wasn't done, because sometimes silence is louder than shouting. And Judith Holcomb had no idea what was coming. HOA meetings were never supposed to be exciting. They happened in the community clubhouse once a month. Always on a Tuesday at 6 p.m. folding chairs, decaf coffee, stale cookies. A projector no one really used. Attendance was usually light. 5 board members, a handful of older residents, and occasionally a neighbor with a petty grievance to air out. But not this one. Not the November meeting. Word had gotten out. Ben didn't know how, but he suspected Judith's hand was in it. Maybe she told a few of her regulars, the ones who smiled with their mouths but never their eyes. Maybe she expected applause for her latest crackdown on community standards. Or maybe she expected him to back down. She was going to be disappointed. Ben arrived 10 minutes early. The parking lot was already half full. He counted at least 3 board members heading in ahead of him. One of them, Russell, didn't even glance in his direction. The other 2 nodded politely with the tight, rehearsed neutrality of people trying to avoid taking sides. Claire had wanted to come, but Ben had asked her to stay home. "I need her to feel comfortable," he'd said. "Judith." "No," Ben replied. "The audience." Inside, the air was thick. Literally. Someone had brought a crock pot of spiced cider, and the scent clung to every thread of Ben's sweater. He took a seat near the middle, not too close to the front, not too far back. Neutral. Observant. Judith was already at the head table shuffling papers. Her eyes flicked to him and then away, expression unreadable. She wore a navy blouse with gold buttons and a pin that read, "Respect, order, community." The irony was suffocating. The meeting began like all others, dull formality. Minutes from the last session. A brief budget update. A reminder about leaf pickup and winterizing sprinklers. Then came the agenda item Ben had waited for, discussion of community standards violations. Judith straightened her papers, smiled at the room, the kind of practiced, self-satisfied smile you might wear after vacuuming a spotless floor twice, just to be sure. "We've received several reports this month," she began. "Mostly minor, but I'd like to bring attention to a concerning pattern." Ben didn't flinch. He watched the way she used the word concerning. Measured, clinical, almost caring. "We've had multiple violations at the Morgan residence. Excessive guest volume, improper decor, and non-compliant waste bin storage. This isn't about punishment. It's about consistency." Russell nodded solemnly. A few neighbors murmured agreement. And that's when Ben stood up. "Excuse me," he said calmly. "I'd like to respond." Judith blinked, mid-sentence. "This isn't open forum yet." "I'm not asking to make a statement," Ben replied. "I'm submitting evidence." He walked to the front of the room, a thin stack of folders in hand. He handed one to each board member. Judith hesitated, but he set hers directly in front of her with quiet precision. The room was silent. Inside, Ben said, "is a detailed rebuttal to each complaint filed against my household over the last 60 days. Every accusation is cross-referenced with bylaw citations, time-stamped evidence, and in multiple cases, contradictions between official policy and the enforcement actions taken." He let that land. The board members had already started flipping pages. "I've also included screenshots of emails, photos of our lawn, porch, and bins, all matching HOA standards, and metadata logs from the community site and HOA email accounts that raise questions about process." Judith's face had gone still. Ben turned to the room. "I don't mind following rules," he said, "but I won't accept a double standard. And I won't accept harassment disguised as community concern." He didn't raise his voice. Didn't need to. Silence sat heavy on the group like fog. Russell cleared his throat. "Mr. Morgan." Ben held up a hand. "One more thing." He reached into his folder and pulled out a USB drive. "This contains screen captures from multiple HOA documents and weblogs, including evidence that several of the most recent complaints were submitted from a personal IP address, not through the official reporting portal. That's a violation of Section 9.1a. He looked at Judith now. Direct. Still calm. "Those complaints were sent from your Gmail account, Judith." Her jaw twitched. Russell shifted in his seat. A woman from the back, someone Ben didn't recognize, said aloud, "Wait, seriously?" Judith opened her mouth, but Ben kept going. "There's more. One complaint involved a noise disturbance that supposedly happened on October 31st. I've submitted audio logs from my doorbell camera, which recorded ambient noise levels below 50 decibels. No music, no shouting, no violations. Claire had baked cookies that night. Ben remembered. The loudest sound was the laugh of their neighbor's daughter when her pumpkin caved in. He turned back to the board. "I understand the need for structure, for rules, but enforcement must be honest, consistent, transparent." His voice was low now, nearly a whisper, but the room leaned in. "I moved here for peace, not surveillance. The silence that followed was different. Not stunned. Not offended. It was contemplative. Uneasy. A shifting of weight. One board member, an older woman with thick glasses, finally looked up. "This is quite thorough," she said. Judith's voice cut in tight. "He's selectively interpreting." "No," Russell said suddenly. "He's not." Everyone turned. Russell looked tired. Not angry, just hollow. "I've reviewed some of those emails," he said, "and I didn't realize they hadn't gone through the right channels. That's on us." Judith opened her mouth again, but no words came. Ben watched her, calm, still, because the moment wasn't explosive. It wasn't theatrical. It was controlled, and he'd taken that control from her. The board voted to table further enforcement on the Morgan residence pending a full review. They didn't apologize, not officially. But Ben saw the shift. Neighbors who'd never made eye contact now looked his way as he left. Some even nodded. As for Judith, she left the room quickly, papers clutched tight to her chest, her pin slightly askew. Ben didn't speak. He didn't need to. He'd done what he came to do. And Judith Holcomb had finally lost her audience. The fallout from the meeting didn't come in an explosion. It came like mold behind wallpaper, quietly, almost invisibly, until it started to rot through. For 3 days after the HOA confrontation, Ben didn't hear a thing from Judith. No notes, no emails, no sudden citations posted to his mailbox. Claire was hopeful. "Maybe she got the message," she said over breakfast. "Maybe you actually scared her." Ben didn't reply. He was watching the street through the kitchen window. Judith's car hadn't moved from her driveway. Not once. He didn't like that, because people like Judith didn't back off. They recalculated, and desperation always made them sloppy. On Friday morning, the anonymous letter arrived. It was stuffed in their mailbox, folded twice, typed in a serif font that looked like it belonged on an old typewriter. "To whom it may concern, I've seen the man at 2407 walking around the neighborhood at night, often alone, often looking into other people's properties. This makes me uncomfortable. Others have seen it too. Please consider this a formal concern for the safety of our community." No name, no signature, no envelope. Ben read it 3 times, then handed it to Claire. "This is her," she whispered, jaw tight. Ben said nothing, but in his mind he was already tracing the pattern, the shift from public authority to covert sabotage. Judith had gone from rulebook citations to character assassination. And it was only beginning. The next week, a local Facebook group lit up. Ben wasn't even a member. Claire was, but she called him into the room when she saw it. The post was vague. A grainy photo of a man walking on the sidewalk at night. The caption read, "Be aware. Not sure who this is, but he doesn't live on this side of the block. Keep an eye out." No one was named. No accusations were made. But the figure in the photo was clearly Ben. Same gray hoodie, same gait, same corner, a block from their home. Claire was livid. This is harassment. This is insane. Ben took a breath. It's calculated. He screenshot the post, logged the timestamp, then added it to the folder now renamed Judith Holcomb Escalations. What Judith didn't know, or didn't remember, was that Ben had installed cameras along the house perimeter. Quietly, privately, motion detecting, night vision. One camera faced the walkway leading to their mailbox. Another covered the driveway and part of the sidewalk. A third, mounted under the eaves, faced the backyard gate. 3 nights after the Facebook post, the backyard motion sensor triggered. Ben opened the feed. It was 2:13 a.m. A figure, petite, quick, moved along the fence line. Not enough detail to identify them. But the next morning, the side gate was ajar, and someone had poured dark liquid over the porch. A sticky, pungent stain that reeked like vinegar and rotting fruit. Claire gagged when she saw it. Ben didn't blink. He cleaned it up, saved the footage, isolated the frames, cross-referenced the walk pattern with video from a month ago, the HOA barbecue Judith had organized. She'd walked the same way, same quick stride, same tight arms. Ben called a private investigator that afternoon. He didn't tell Claire at first. Not because he was hiding anything, but because she didn't need to carry it. The investigator's name was Jordan Wells, retired sheriff's deputy, now in private practice. She was sharp, quiet, and not easily rattled. Ben handed her the flash drive, explained everything. 2 days later, she called back. "Your instincts are right," she said. "There's a pattern here, and I think you've got enough to take this further." Ben waited. Wells continued. "Judith Holcomb has a history. 3 years ago, her previous HOA board, over in Silver Ridge, removed her after multiple reports of misconduct. That got his attention. Misconduct, retaliatory complaints, targeted surveillance, harassing letters. She nearly sued when they ousted her. Why didn't she?" Wells paused. "She tried, but her own documentation ended up undermining her case. They had a lawyer, a sharp one, scorched her claims in deposition. She moved here 6 months later." Ben exhaled. The pieces were aligning. "She's not new to this," he said. "No," Wells agreed. "But she underestimates you. She's used to scaring people off." Ben's voice was calm. "I don't scare easy." The next strike came Thursday. Ben was returning from the grocery store. As he pulled into the driveway, he saw them, 2 uniformed officers standing on his front step. Claire was inside, her face pale behind the glass. He parked, stepped out slowly. "Sir," one officer said, hand resting near his belt. "We received a report of suspicious activity involving a drone flying near residential windows. Neighbors claim it originated from this address." Ben stared at them. "I don't own a drone," he said flatly. "Mind if we ask to take a look around the yard?" Claire appeared in the doorway. "What is this?" "Ma'am, we're just responding to a call," the officer said. "Routine check." Ben nodded. "You can look." They walked the perimeter, found nothing, took his name for the report, and left. As soon as they were gone, Claire turned to him. "She's trying to get us on a watch list." Ben didn't answer, but that night he filed an official complaint, not with the HOA, with a local attorney, and he CC'd a second party, a regional housing advocate with a specialty in HOA abuse cases. The next morning, Judith knocked on their door. No email, no letter. She came in person, something she hadn't done since the beginning. Claire answered. Ben stood behind her, silent. Judith smiled thinly. "I just wanted to clear the air. Some of the neighbors are feeling uncomfortable. There's a lot of tension lately. Maybe we can find a way to de-escalate." Claire blinked. "You showed the whole block a blurry photo of my husband and called him suspicious." Judith raised a hand, palms out. "I never named him, and it wasn't me who posted that, technically." Ben finally spoke. "You should leave." Her smile twitched. "I'm just trying to keep things civil." Ben didn't raise his voice, didn't move. "You had your chance. You turned the HOA into your personal weapon." Judith's mouth opened, some practice defense forming, but he cut her off. "Do not come to this house again." For the first time, she hesitated. Something in his tone, not anger but certainty, made her pause. She turned and walked away. Claire shut the door. Ben didn't move for a long time. He was waiting, because now Judith had crossed the final line, and she wasn't going to see what was coming next. 3 weeks. That's how long it took for the hammer to fall. 3 quiet weeks where Judith Holcomb didn't leave another note, post another photo, or knock on another door. Her emails to the board grew less frequent. Her signature sign-offs lost their chipper tone. Ben knew that wasn't surrender. It was retreat, strategic, temporary. But he hadn't spent all that time waiting. He'd spent it working. The attorney's name was Sasha Ng. Civil litigation. Special focus on housing rights, HOAs, and community abuse of power. She didn't flinch when Ben laid out the case. The emails, the photos, the threats disguised as concern. "Most people come to me when it's already too late," she said after the first meeting. "But you were building this file before she even knew she was in a fight." Sasha called it pre-litigation strategy. Ben called it insurance. By the time they sent the cease and desist, Judith had already made her final mistake. It came in the form of a printed flyer. Someone had slipped it under 3 doors on Ben Street. All neighbors who'd attended the HOA meeting last month and hadn't sided with Judith. The flyer had no return address, no HOA branding. It read, "Warning. Certain residents have shown a pattern of defiance and disruption. Be aware of those who threaten the harmony of our neighborhood. Records of behavior are being documented and will be made public should disruptions continue." Ben's name wasn't mentioned, but his house was one of the 3. So was Denise's, a widow with arthritis who hadn't attended a meeting in 2 years. That was Judith's last move, and it was her worst one, because it turned the neighborhood against her. The emergency board meeting was scheduled a week later. The agenda? Review of executive conduct and enforcement procedure violations. Ben didn't speak this time. He didn't need to. The attorney did. Sasha stood at the head of the room, a small black binder in her hand. In reviewing the conduct of Ms. Holcomb over the last 60 days, she began, "We have compiled clear evidence of abuse of authority, fabrication of violations, and behavior that could be construed as harassment under California Civil Code 4515. Russell, for once, didn't defend Judith. Another board member, the one who'd always worn reading glasses too far down his nose, cleared his throat awkwardly. "This doesn't reflect the spirit of the HOA. We never meant," Sasha cut him off coolly, "but it does reflect the letter of your rules. And the lack of oversight allowed it to escalate." She tapped the binder. "We are prepared to pursue civil action if necessary." The room went quiet. Then Judith stood, calm, composed, face unreadable. She looked at Ben for just a moment and he saw it, the crack. Then she turned to the board. "I think it's best," she said carefully, "if I step down from the HOA." She didn't apologize. She didn't need to. Her resignation said it all. The days after were strangely light. Neighbors waved. The tone of sidewalk chatter softened. Someone left muffins on their porch. No note, just the unspoken offer of goodwill. Russell stopped by once, unannounced. "I was wrong," he said. "I let her run wild. I thought we were keeping the place clean. Orderly." Ben nodded once. "Control isn't order." Russell swallowed hard. "Guess I forgot that." Then he left. Claire found Ben on the porch the next morning. Laptop open, coffee untouched. "You okay?" she asked, brushing a curl from his forehead. "Yeah," he said. "Just thinking." "About what?" He closed the laptop. "How systems hide people like her," he said. "How they reward the ones who speak softly and carry a clipboard." Claire sat beside him. "But you beat her," she said. "You didn't scream or make threats. You beat her with the truth." Ben was quiet for a long moment. "I didn't want to win," he said. "I just wanted to breathe." She squeezed his hand. "You can now." Judith's house went up for sale 3 weeks later. The listing was quiet, discreet, but word got around. Ben never saw her pack. He only saw the car leave. Silver Lexus, license plate slightly crooked. One last glance over her shoulder at a neighborhood she tried to rule like a kingdom, and failed. The final letter came a month after she left. Typed, signed, "Dear Mr. Morgan, we are writing to inform you that the HOA board has adopted new procedural safeguards to ensure all enforcement actions are conducted transparently and without bias. Your documentation was instrumental in shaping these revisions. We thank you." It was signed by the new HOA president. Claire laughed when she read it. "They should have just put your name on the sign." Ben smirked. "I don't want a sign," he said. "Just a quiet street and a short grass policy that doesn't turn into war." As winter crept in, the neighborhood finally felt still. Not dead, not hollow, just still. No more notes, no more flyers, no more games. Just the sound of wind moving through the sycamore trees. And peace, honest, earned peace. For the man who waited, watched, and won without ever raising his voice.